Good evening from Columbus State University. I'm News 3's Phil Scoggins. I'll be moderating tonight's debate. To our Boomer 102.5 listeners and our News 3 viewers here in Columbus, as well as those who are watching us on our sister stations, WJBF in Augusta and WSAV in Savannah, I'm pleased to welcome you to our debate featuring the two remaining Republican candidates seeking to become the 83rd governor of the state of Georgia. The winner will face Democrat Stacey Abrams in November. Let's introduce the candidates at this time. They are in alphabetical order. Georgia Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle and Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Please welcome them, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's debate will follow the same format as the previous ones that we have presented as part of our 2018 debate series sponsored by AFLAC and TSIS. It is in three parts. Part one involves a series of questions from our media panel that will be directed to the candidates. The candidate whose turn it is to initially answer the question will have up to 1 minute to give their answer. The other candidate will then have up to 45 seconds for rebuttal. Part two involves questions submitted both via social media and from members of our audience here in University Hall. My colleague, News 3's Teresa Whitaker, will pose those questions to the candidates later on. And finally, each candidate will offer a closing statement as we wrap up tonight's debate. Now let's meet the members of our media panel this evening. They are News 3's digital journalist, Jessalyn Adams. Dr. Nathan Combs, he is Assistant Professor of the Political Science Department at the Columbus State University campus here. Ashley Bridges, Georgia Capitol Bureau Chief for News 3, as well as our sister stations, WJBF in Augusta and WSAV in Savannah. And Matthew Tessier with WCUG 88.5 FM, Columbus State University's student-driven radio station. Jessalyn Adams is going to be bringing our first question to our candidates tonight. It starts with Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. Jessalyn.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Cagle, Amazon has Atlanta on its final list of possible cities to build its new and second headquarters. What is your plan to make the state of Georgia more appealing to these mega companies looking to add and create thousands of jobs?
Well, first of all, we're excited that Amazon is looking at Georgia, and we've made one short list, and we're very hopeful that we can make the second. I will tell you that if it's a financial decision that Amazon is looking for, they could not find a better place than Georgia. When you look at our low tax environment, you also look at the access to human capital with Georgia State along with Georgia Tech, Emory University, as well as SCAD. But probably the biggest asset that we have to offer is the busiest airport in America. And that's what we're excited about, looking for more companies to come, create more high-paying jobs just like Amazon. But a return on its investment has to be weighed. We can't overpay for projects, and we have to stay firm with the value systems in which we hold dear.
Secretary Kemp, you have a 45-second rebuttal.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be back in Columbus tonight for this debate. We're so excited about where we are, building off the momentum of the primary, continuing to surge in the runoff, and really this race is now about trust. Who do you trust to do the right thing when no one is watching? And I think that's becoming very clear in this race. But my campaign has been focused from day one on putting Georgians first ahead of the special interests, the status quo, and the politically correct. And that's why I certainly support Amazon coming to Georgia. It's a great place for them. But we also need to be focused on other parts of Georgia. No matter what your zip code, no matter where you live, put a focus on economic development and investment. And no one knows that better than this region.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Combs, you have the next question. It goes to Secretary Kemp to begin with.
Secretary Kemp, you are on record saying that you would support a religious liberties bill that would allow private companies to refuse service to LGBTQ customers. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Coca-Cola, and Delta all lobbied against the Keep Faith in Adoption and Foster Care Act. Do you have any concern that expanded religious freedom bills may have a negative effect on economic growth in Georgia?
Well, first of all, I do not believe your statement to be correct before you started your question. What I have said was I support state legislation that references religious freedom that's in the federal statute, like many, many other states around, every state around us, that would not discriminate against anyone, but it would protect Christians and other religious individuals. And I think that's something that we need to do in Georgia. It won't hurt business. Other states have it. It hasn't hurt business. That is a founding principle of our country. So I will support and help get passed a religious freedom bill that references simply what is in the federal statute.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle for rebuttal.
Georgia's been very blessed to have businesses all over the world to locate here. This state is the #1 state to do business in, and we're excited of helping build by lowering taxes as well as creating a workforce that is second to none. And I don't think that we have to sacrifice our value system in order to recruit the kind of industry that Georgia has been blessed to have. And I will continue to fight to ensure that we're adding 500,000 jobs in the first 4 years. But I, too, have agreed to sign a mirror image of what is the federal law, the law of the land now, which is the Religious Liberty Bill.
Thank you, sir. Ashley Bridges, you have the next question for Secretary Cagle.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle, on the note of the intersection of conservative values and economic growth, I'd also like to go over 2 of your tweets and just briefly discuss the potential business implications of those. Around a week ago, you tweeted, "Conservatives join me in forever boycotting Judd Apatow's work. Hardly have to ask as his movies are terrible. This is disgusting." Now, that was, of course, in response to Apatow's calling President Trump a Nazi after the president suggested ending trials for those illegally crossing the border and the separation of children from their families at the border. Apatow is a producer, a director, and an actor. You're a candidate for the governor of Georgia. And that is one of Georgia's biggest growing businesses. Similarly, with the NRA tweet with Delta saying that you would boycott legislation that could benefit Delta unless they reinstated their relationship with the NRA. Do you have any concern that taking on major industries and businesses that employ thousands of Georgians could have negative ramifications and potentially suppress or even drive out economic growth in our state?
Well, certainly the film industry has been a huge boom within our state. It represents over $10 billion of economic impact, and we are now the #1 place for featured films to exist. But within that context, I think it is important that there is a liberal agenda that is pushing very, very hard to weigh in on businesses, for them to make social policies that I think is not really within their realm of expertise and not their role as a corporate citizen. I think corporations exist to be the fiduciary to their shareholders, not to engage in social conduct in this way. And so I'm going to continue to be very strong in my faith as well as my value system, and I think that it clearly represents what Georgians are looking for. I understand that there might not be everyone that agrees with President Trump and his approach. I happen to. I think his policies matter, our policies matters, and we get things done.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp.
Well, and that's coming from the guy that socialized with all these people that he's now criticizing. But I think as somebody that's been in the private sector for 30 years, it's not the government's role to tell private sector companies what they can and can't do when we're not doing that from a regulatory standpoint. You know, even if we don't like it, that board can make that decision that they want. And we should stand up as conservatives and pass things like religious freedom, but not try to have government run private sector companies, even if you do not like what they're doing. And that's why we've got to put principle ahead of politics. That was a good political move, but coming from the lieutenant governor, or governor, or other statewide elected official, it's simply politics, and that's wrong.
Matthew, you have the next question for Secretary Kemp.
Well, thank you both for being here. My question is, Georgia's campus carry law allows students 21 and over with a firearm license to concealed carry a weapon to class with some restrictions. You're on record supporting this law because you believe it makes colleges and universities safer. What, if any, additional measures would you take to improve security at schools like Columbus State University?
Well, you are correct that I'm a supporter of the legislation. I'm a strong supporter, and not only a supporter, but an advocate for the Second Amendment endorsed by Georgia Carry. the Georgia Hunting and Fishing Federation A rating for the NRA, and one of my strongest supporters, former Congressman Bob Barr, is an NRA board member. So we need to be looking at how we can expand the Second Amendment so not only people can hunt and shoot, but they can also carry and defend themselves. And Lord knows in this world that we live in, we need to do that. So I think we need to continue to look at campus carry to make it a little more even kill, if you will, because there's some on campus that I've heard from that don't have the ability to carry that would like to, especially those that are in teaching and in the administration to protect themselves.
Lieutenant Governor.
Well, I was there to help pass the legislation, and I think it's good legislation, and I think it also creates the proper balance that exists. But I will also say that I am the only candidate here that is endorsed by the NRA, and they understand my strong defense of the Second Amendment. Unlike Secretary Kemp, who, when he was in the Senate and was passing legislation or attempting to do so, he failed to extend that opportunity in a state of emergency. He voted against that, taking our guns away during that time. That is one thing to run around in a big pickup truck and have a lot of guns around you, but sadly enough, the record doesn't reflect the rhetoric.
Well, I would just say that the politics is not correct on that. Number one, there was not a vote on that. That was a procedural move to send the bill back
Sir,
to be worked on further. So
this is not rebuttal time.
Okay.
So we need to move on to the next question. Dr. Combs, you have the next question.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle, in support of the Safe Families program, you have repeatedly emphasized the importance of keeping families together. Do you believe that the Trump administration's practice of separating families for 2 months was a morally just policy?
Well, I think if you look at my record, you will find that I have always advocated for families, along with what I did this year around foster care, the ability for families to have alternative options to allow their children to be in the hands of a loved one or someone at church. And I stand behind that. I think that President Trump has done a wonderful job in putting a priority on securing the border, and I stand with him to do so, even to the point of being willing to send the National Guard to secure the border. I will tell you, as Lieutenant Governor, we've also championed the strongest illegal immigration law in the country, along with passing Sanctuary City, outlawing that. And I've had the courage to hold Decatur accountable in that effort, and I will continue to do that as we move forward.
Secretary Kemp.
Well, certainly as a father to 3 teenage daughters, I have sympathy for the separation of the families at the border. Let me just say that first. But I absolutely support the president. It's like Senator David Perdue said the other day. There was legislation that the Democrats held up that would have had comprehensive immigration reform done over a year ago, and they continue to not want to work with the president. So I appreciate him sticking to his word, doing what he campaigned on, and securing our border. So we absolutely need to do that. But from a state perspective, on something that we can and will do under a Kemp administration, is we're going to track and immediately deport criminal illegals. And that is a plan that I've had in place for months and months, and we'll do that to keep our families safe.
Thank you, sir. Ashley Bridges, you have the next question for Secretary Kemp.
Secretary Kemp, you've prided yourself on running a very off-color, some might say politically incorrect campaign. Should you secure the Republican nomination and win in November, are you not concerned that that demeanor and tone could inhibit your ability to actually get things done, particularly with Democrats and even moderate Republicans?
Not at all. I mean, I think people are ready for a politically incorrect person that will say and talk about the issues that we have before us, like I just mentioned, track and deport. Stop and dismantling gangs, public safety reform, building off of what Governor Deal has done with criminal justice reform to keep our families safe. You know, sometimes leaders need to be politically incorrect and talk about, you know, what federal prosecutors are saying, that Georgia has become a home to the Mexican drug cartel and a distribution hub. Our children are getting shot up. It's creating and helped drive sex trafficking, the opioid epidemic, and sometimes you need to be politically incorrect and talk about those issues, because we will not stay the #1 state in the country for business if we cannot keep our families, our employees, and our communities safe.
Mr. Cagle?
Well, obviously, the one thing that is for certain, every poll that has been issued has shown that I am the right candidate to win in November. And it is important that we nominate someone who is not just electable, but can get the job done as well and does what he says he can do. I can tell you that doing a bad job as an insider does not make you an outsider. And it is important that voters understand who they are voting for and what issues that they have fought and won on time and time again. I've lowered our taxes for the state. I've created more jobs partnering with Governor Deal, and I do what I say I'll do.
Matthew, you have the next question for Lieutenant Governor Cagle.
Tax incentives have attracted many film and TV productions to our state. Here in Columbus, there are plans for new studios and expanded opportunities for CSU film and media students. If elected governor, what will you do to build an even better relationship with the film industry?
Well, certainly tax incentives have been one of the tools that we have used in order to create this robust economy. As you know, we have job tax credits along with investment tax credits, and many of the companies that are located here have taken advantage of that, and I want to continue to do that. But I think it's also important that we stay true to lowering taxes. I don't want to be California. I don't want to be in a high tax environment. That's why I've committed to lowering taxes, not just from 6 to 5.5, which we did this year, but under 5% as governor in the next 4 years. And I will use every tool at my disposal in order to make certain that that happens. That is our record. Just like President Trump and just like Governor Deal, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it, and we have real tangible results to show for it.
Mr. Kemp.
Well, let's be clear. When the campaign started, Casey was proposing a $100 million tax cut, which is nothing. Now he's taking credit for the largest tax cut in the history of the state because Donald Trump lowered taxes at the federal level and created a windfall. So we need to thank Donald Trump for that. Also, before this year, the only people that have gotten tax cuts have been the special interest groups. Now, I support the film tax credit because it's broad-based, but my plan is to implement a spending cap so we cut and lower spending, hold spending where we are, budget conservatively, and we have the money to lower the state income tax. That is a plan people can believe in and is what I will do.
Jesselyn, you have the next question for Secretary Kemp.
Secretary Kemp, an investment company is suing you and an agricultural business you invested in after company officials say you failed to repay a $500,000 loan. How do you respond, and what do you say to one of the plaintiffs who, in the wake of this lawsuit, has questioned your ability to handle taxpayer dollars?
Well, I think that same individual that's saying that, if you look, he's a big political contributor to my opponent who has been running negative television ads lying about my record. You know, he says he supports small startup companies and investment, and that's exactly what I invested in. As a private sector investor, I own 8% of that company. The company has had a rough time through the recession, and that has continued. They do owe money. I helped shore up a couple of loans to try to help the company survive that they have not paid back, so that they're now, the company has faulted on the debt, so this individual is suing the company and myself, and they owe them the money, and they need to pay them. But they also owe many other people, including myself, and I'm hopeful that they'll do that. But that is how the private sector works, and for Casey to lie about this on television is outrageous.
Lieutenant Governor.
Well, first of all, the facts don't lie, and the facts are pretty clear, and that is that Secretary Kemp personally signed a guarantee of $500,000 to an individual, that he looked him in the eye and said that I'm going to pay you back, and sadly enough, he is not. And on July the 25th, after the runoff, he'll be in court where he will have to defend himself. But the reality is that farmers need to be paid. If you're going to say you're going to do something, you need to do it. He clearly lost his license because of his failure to act. And you are fiduciary when you are signing a personal guarantee. You're not just simply part of an LLC with no fiduciary responsibility, and he needs to live up to it.
Ashley Bridges, you have the next question for Mr. Cagle.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle, as we just touched on, this campaign has included many negative ads and allegations and mistakes from each side against the opponent, including your campaign making those references to Secretary Kemp's alleged business dealings. What is the mistake that you have made, and how did you learn from it?
Well, there's probably been a lot of mistakes that I've made over the years, and probably too many to mention. I think the most important thing is to own up when you do make a mistake and be truthful with the people of the state. And that is what I've done as Lieutenant Governor. I've been true to the things that are important, building this world-class workforce that I've articulated, but also the College and Career Academy network that I created in 2007, and I've been committed in making sure that we're doing everything that we can to provide more options and more choices to our kids so they can have the ability to have a great paying job, not to be government reliant, but to be self-reliant. And I think we can create a rising tide that lifts all boats, and that's what I want to be focused on.
Mr. Kemp.
Well, you know, he didn't answer the question, number one, and maybe he could answer the question of, you were lying about me owing farmers, because I do not owe a single farmer a single dime. I've never had a grain license. So what you're saying is absolutely true, and I know you were raised better than that. But what this campaign is about, and what he should be apologizing for, is that on tape he put politics in front of policy, just going against all those principles that he's talked about for all those years, and to get campaign cash. And if that's not criminal, it certainly should be. So that's what needs to be apologized for.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break at this time, but we ask you to please stay with us as the 2018 Republican gubernatorial runoff debate continues from right here at Columbus State University.